Commander Alan Wright sat alone in his small office on the space station orbiting Earth. His hands shook as he watched the video for the third time. The footage was grainy and dark, smuggled out by a brave spy. It showed 300 human prisoners lined up in rows on a dusty field. They wore torn uniforms with the Human Alliance symbol still visible on their shoulders. Alan recognized many faces. These were the soldiers captured 6 months ago when the Zaxian Empire attacked the New Horizon colony. The Empire had promised to treat them according to the rules of war that all galactic races had agreed to follow 50 years ago, when humans first met aliens. The video showed tall, scaled Zaxian guards moving among the human prisoners. Lieutenant Susan Morgan stood at the front of the group. Her face was bruised, but her eyes burned with pride. She had been the highest-ranking officer captured at New Horizon. The Zaxian Empire finds these humans guilty of resisting the rightful expansion of our territory, said a deep voice in the video. The High Command has ordered their execution as a demonstration of imperial resolve. Susan lifted her chin and spoke clearly. We die as soldiers of humanity. Our people will not forget. Alan's screen filled with bright light as the Zaxian weapons fired. When the light faded, nothing remained of the prisoners but ash. Alan closed his eyes, but the image stayed with him. He took a deep breath and pressed the button to call Earth. This is Commander Wright. I need to speak with President Wells immediately. Priority code black. 20 minutes later, Alan stood before a wall-sized screen showing the meeting room of the Human Alliance Council on Earth. President Catherine Wells sat at the center of a long table. Her face was pale as she watched the execution video. When it ended, the room was silent. Then President Wells spoke, her voice quiet but firm. How do we know this is real? 3 separate intelligence sources confirmed it, Madam President, Alan said. The execution took place yesterday at the prison camp on Zaxian Moonbase Alpha 7. An older man at the table slammed his fist down. This is an outrage. We must respond with full military force. Another council member shook her head. Our fleets are scattered. The Zaxians outnumber us 5-1. We need to be careful. Careful, interrupted a third voice. They executed our people. This breaks every agreement we've made since first contact. President Wells raised her hand for silence. Alan had always admired her calm approach to problems. She had worked for peace with the Zaxian Empire for years. But now he saw something new in her eyes, a cold anger that made him stand straighter. Commander Wright, she said, how long would it take to activate our emergency defense plan? Alan blinked in surprise. The emergency defense plan was supposed to be a last resort. 3 days to recall all ships. 2 weeks to fully mobilize. Begin. Immediately, she ordered. Madam President, said a worried council member, this will be seen as a declaration of war. President Wells stood up. For a moment, she looked at a photo on the wall showing the first meeting between humans and aliens, a hopeful day when the galaxy seemed full of new friends. Then she turned back to the screen. The Zaxians declared war when they executed our people, she said. Until now, we have been fighting border disputes and arguing over colonies. We tried to be reasonable. We followed the rules. But today, everything changes. She stepped closer to the screen, her voice growing stronger. Today, we are no longer fighting border disputes. Today, we fight for our right to exist among the stars. Within hours, the execution video spread across Earth and all human colonies. People who had argued against military spending now demanded action. Factories that made civilian ships began converting to build warships. Young people lined up outside military recruitment centers. Commander Alan Wright worked without sleep for 2 days, sending orders to human ships spread across the galaxy. Some were days or weeks away, but all received the same message. Return to defensive positions. Prepare for war. On the 3rd day, Alan was called to a new meeting. This time, the screen showed not just President Wells and her council, but military, leaders from all human worlds. The Zaxian ambassador has requested a meeting, President Wells told them. He claims the executions were unauthorized, carried out by a rogue commander. General Frank Martinez, a veteran of the New Horizon defense, snorted in disbelief. They're lying. The video clearly showed Imperial elite guards. Only the High Command can order them to act. President Wells nodded. I agree. This was a deliberate choice by the Empire. They believe we are weak, that we will accept any explanation to avoid war. She turned to look at each person in the meeting. I have called you here to announce my decision. The Human Alliance will not accept the Zaxian explanation. We will not negotiate new terms. As of this moment, we are at war with the Zaxian Empire. No, one spoke against her decision. Alan saw determination on every face. General Martinez, President Wells continued, you are appointed Supreme Commander of all human military forces. Your first task is to implement Protocol Lazarus. Alan caught his breath. Protocol Lazarus meant activating all military resources, even the secret ones. For decades, humans had appeared weaker than they truly were, hiding their best technology from the galactic community. Yes, Madam President, General Martinez said. And our strategy? The Zaxians believe they know how humans fight, President Wells replied. They expect us to follow the same rules of warfare that other species have used for centuries. We will not do this. We will fight as humans have always fought when our survival is at stake, with every resource, every advantage, and no surrender. As the meeting ended, Alan looked out the window of his station at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zaxian Empire waited, believing they had struck a decisive blow against a weaker enemy. They did not understand what they had awakened. Next morning, General Martinez arrived at the space station. His first order was simple. Send this message to all human ships and colonies. Remember New Horizon. The Empire will pay. Across human space, ships began to move. Weapons long kept hidden were brought into the light. Engineers modified civilian equipment for war. On 1,000 worlds, humans prepared to fight. The Zaxian Empire had made a terrible mistake. They thought executing prisoners would show their strength and humanity's weakness. Instead, it had united all humans in a way nothing else could. As Alan watched the growing fleet gather around Earth, he remembered Susan Morgan's last words. Our people will not forget. He whispered to the stars, we won't forget, Susan, and they'll never forget what's coming. In the Grand Palace on Zax Prime, Emperor Kraxathul smashed a display showing the loss of the Imperial Fist. His reptilian scales darkened with rage as advisors cowered before him. How? He roared. How did primitive humans disable our greatest warship? Admiral Vex, commander of the Imperial Defense Fleet, stepped forward. The humans used tactics we have never seen before, Emperor. Short-range FTL jumps during battle. Quantum disruptors planted by infiltration teams. Impossible, hissed the Emperor. Our military doctrine has conquered 17 civilizations. It cannot be defeated by humans. A science advisor dared to speak. The humans have hidden their true capabilities, Emperor. They appeared technologically inferior when they joined the galactic community, but this was deception. Emperor Kraxathul paced the polished floor. The execution of human prisoners was meant to demonstrate Zaxian power, to show humans their place in the galaxy. Instead, it had awakened an unexpected enemy. Deploy the Imperial Armada, the Emperor ordered. All ships, all forces. Crush these, humans before other species join them. Across Zaxian space, thousands of warships prepared for battle. The Imperial Armada was the greatest military force in the known galaxy, ships that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Admiral Vex bowed to his Emperor. The Armada will not fail. The humans may have won a small victory, but they cannot stand against our full might. On Earth, Admiral Nicole Baker stood in the Human Alliance Command Center. As the highest-ranking naval officer after General Martinez, she now led the space defense of humanity. Screens around her showed the movements of both human and Zaxian forces across the galaxy. The Zaxians are mobilizing their entire fleet, reported a sensor officer. Thousands of ships moving toward human space. Nicole wasn't surprised. The capture of the Imperial Fist and the victories at Vega Prime had hurt Zaxian pride. Their response would be overwhelming force, the only strategy they understood. General Martinez is requesting your battle plan, Admiral, said her aide. Nicole studied the tactical displays. The human fleet was growing stronger each day as hidden factories produced new ships and civilian vessels were converted for war. But they still had nowhere near the numbers of the Zaxian armada. Fighting them directly would be suicide. Tell the general I'm implementing what I call the Baker Doctrine, she said. Never engage on the enemy's terms, never fight where they expect you to be. She outlined her strategy. Instead of meeting the Zaxian fleet in open space, human forces would use hit-and-run attacks. They would target supply lines, fuel depots, and communication relays. Most importantly, they would use Dr. Foster's technology to predict and interrupt Zaxian FTL jumps, forcing them to fight in small groups rather than as a unified force. And Tau Ceti? Asked her aide. Nicole nodded grimly. That's where we make our stand. The Tau Ceti system was a key human colony, but it also had a unique feature, a dense asteroid field perfect for an ambush. If the Zaxians wanted a decisive battle, they would find one there. Over the next weeks, the war escalated rapidly. Zaxian forces pushed into human territory, overwhelming smaller outposts and colonies. But each time they attempted to gather for a major assault, their ships found themselves pulled out of FTL travel in unexpected locations, separated from their fleet, vulnerable to human attacks. Admiral Vex grew increasingly frustrated as his carefully planned offensives fell apart. Human ships appeared and disappeared using their short-range jump technique, striking Zaxian vessels and vanishing before they could respond. Supply convoys disappeared. Communication networks failed. They refused to fight honorably, Vex complained to his officers. This is not how war is conducted, but it was exactly how humans fought when their survival was at stake. The Human Alliance fleet, led by Admiral Baker, adapted constantly. When the Zaxians developed countermeasures against one tactic, humans changed to another. They used civilian ships as decoys and mining equipment as weapons. They turned asteroids into missiles and gas giants into traps. Finally, after 3 months of frustrating campaigns, Admiral Vex detected a major concentration of human forces at Tau Ceti. Here, at last, was an opportunity for the decisive battle he sought. We will crush them with overwhelming force, he told his captains, the full might of the Imperial Armada against their pitiful fleet. Over 2,000 Zaxian warships jumped into the Tau Ceti system, expecting to find the human fleet in orbit around the colony world. Instead, they found themselves in the midst of the asteroid field, their formation disrupted by the gravitational anomalies humans had created. Admiral Baker sprung her trap. From hiding places within the asteroid field, 300 human ships opened fire. They didn't target the Zaxian warships directly. Instead, they used gravity weapons to pull asteroids into the enemy formation. Zaxian ships are breaking formation, reported her tactical officer with satisfaction. Their rigid battle structure is falling apart. Nicole nodded. This was the fundamental weakness of the Zaxian military, their reliance on thousand-year-old tactics and formations. They couldn't adapt quickly to unexpected situations. Execute Phase 2, she ordered. Human ships began their jump-and-strike attacks, appearing next to confused Zaxian vessels, firing, then jumping away. At the same time, special operations teams like Daniel Kim's launched from stealth ships, boarding key Zaxian command vessels to plant disruptors. The Battle of Tau Ceti lasted 14 hours. When it ended, over 500 Zaxian ships had been destroyed or captured. The rest retreated in disarray, jumping out of the system in small groups rather than as a coordinated fleet. It was a devastating defeat for the Zaxian Empire, the worst in their 1,000-year history. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. Species that had feared the Empire for centuries now saw that they could be beaten. Emperor Kraxathul was enraged by the defeat. If we cannot defeat their ships, we will destroy their worlds, he declared. Launch the planet killers. On Earth, General Frank Martinez received the intelligence report with grim concern. The Zaxians were deploying their most destructive weapons. General Frank Martinez walked through the massive underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. This place had existed for 50 years, since humans first met aliens and learned they were not alone in the galaxy. But it had never been fully used until now. "Show me everything," Frank told the base commander. Bright lights came on, revealing row after row of ship parts, weapons, and equipment. The facility stretched for miles under the mountains. Similar bases were opening across Earth and all human colonies. "Protocol Lazarus is at stage 2, said the commander. "All hidden production facilities are active." Frank nodded. When humans joined the galactic community, they showed only some of their military power. The best weapons and technology stayed secret, hidden in places like this. It was an old human strategy. Never let potential enemies know your true strength. "How long until the first new ships are ready?" Frank asked. 10 days for the fighters. 3 weeks for the capital ships," Frank frowned. "Too slow. The Zaxians think we're weak after the New Horizon attack. They don't expect a quick response." "Sir, building warships takes time, even with our hidden technology." "Then we modify what we have," Frank decided. "Contact all civilian ship companies. I want every transport and cargo ship fitted with weapons within a week." The commander looked shocked. "That's against the Galactic Council rules. Civilian ships cannot be—" "The rules changed when they executed our people," Frank interrupted. "Get it done." As Frank left the facility, his communication device buzzed. Dr. Ellen Foster, the top scientist at Quantum Defense Systems, wanted to meet immediately. An hour later, Frank sat in a small, secure room with Dr. Foster. She was a short woman with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. On the table between them sat a small metal box. "This is what you've been hiding?" Frank asked. Dr. Foster smiled. "This is just the control unit. The real technology is in orbit, powered down and disguised as communication satellites." She pressed her hand to the box. It glowed blue, then projected a 3D map of the solar system. "For 20 years, my team has developed technologies the Galactic Council forbids," she explained. "Advanced shield systems that can absorb energy weapons, gravity, manipulation devices that can pull enemy ships out of faster-than-light travel." Frank stared at the projection. The human military already had good shields and weapons, but nothing like this. Why wasn't I told about this before? President Wells believed we would find peaceful solutions with the Zaxian Empire. This technology could start a galactic arms race if revealed. And now? Dr. Foster's face hardened. "My nephew was at New Horizon. He was one of the executed prisoners." Frank nodded, understanding her pain. Everyone had lost someone. "How quickly can this technology be deployed?" "The orbital systems can be activated immediately. Fitting the new shields to ships will take 2 weeks for the entire fleet." "Do it," Frank ordered. "And what else have you been hiding?" Dr. Foster pressed the box again. The projection changed to show a complex pattern of lines. "This is our greatest secret. We can track and predict faster than light jumps. And more importantly, we can interrupt them." Frank leaned forward. This changed everything. The Zaxian military strategy depended on their ability to jump their fleets across vast distances without warning. If humans could predict and stop these jumps. "The Zaxians believe their FTL technology is superior to ours," Dr. Foster said. "They're wrong." As Frank left the meeting, messages arrived from across human space. On the colony world of Proxima Centauri B, engineer Paul Carter had discovered that mining equipment used on human worlds could be modified into powerful ship weapons. On Mars, the underground factories were already producing new fighter ships. From Europa came news that the Ice Moon's hidden shipyards had completed the first of the new heavy cruisers. All across human territory, people united with a single purpose. Civilian ships arrived at military bases to be fitted with weapons. Retired soldiers returned to service. Young people left schools and jobs to join the fight. Frank established his command center on the moon base. From there, he could direct the gathering human forces while remaining hidden from Zaxian spies. 6 days after the execution video, the first reports of Zaxian ships approaching human colonies arrived. Frank called an emergency meeting with his commanders. "They expect us to be defensive," he told them, "to hide behind our planetary shields and wait for help from the Galactic Council." Commander Alan Wright, now Frank's chief of intelligence, nodded. The Zaxian military doctrine is predictable. They will target our outer colonies first, then move inward toward Earth. Then we do what they don't expect, Frank said. We attack first. He revealed his plan. The newly armed civilian ships would protect the colonies, appearing to be the main human defense. Meanwhile, the real military ships, enhanced with Dr. Foster's technology, would launch a surprise attack on Zaxian outposts. We need to name our first major ship for this mission, said Admiral Julie Rogers. Something to remind us why we fight. Frank thought of the execution video, of Susan Morgan's brave final words. We'll call it the Retribution. The Retribution was nearly complete, hiding in the rings of Saturn. It carried weapons no Zaxian had ever seen, and shields that could withstand their strongest attacks. But its greatest advantage was its captain. Lisa Johnson had grown up on New Horizon Colony before joining the Human Alliance Navy. Her parents still lived there when the Zaxians attacked. They were not among the survivors. Frank met with Captain Johnson on the Retribution the day before its first mission. You understand what we're asking you to do? He said. This has never been attempted in battle before. Lisa nodded, her face showing no emotion. Short-range FTL jumps during combat. Jump in, fire, jump out before they can respond. The calculations must be perfect, Frank warned. One error and you could materialize inside a planet or a star. My crew has trained on the simulators. We're ready. Frank handed her a data chip. These are your primary targets. The Zaxian outpost at Vega Prime, then their fuel depot at Sigma 9. Hit them fast, show them we can strike anywhere, then return. Lisa took the chip. And if we encounter prisoner transports? Frank knew what she was really asking. Lisa wanted revenge for New Horizon, for her parents, for the executed prisoners. But revenge could lead to mistakes. Your mission is to demonstrate our capabilities, not to start a massacre, Frank said firmly. We are not like them. We don't kill prisoners. Lisa nodded slowly. Understood, sir. As Frank returned to the moon base, news arrived from Earth. President Wells had addressed the Galactic Council, showing them the execution video and declaring that the Human Alliance would defend itself against Zaxian aggression. The Council had failed to reach a decision, paralyzed by fear of the powerful Zaxian Empire. But privately, representatives from several species contacted human ambassadors. The Arcturus Collective, an advanced civilization that rarely involved itself in galactic politics, offered technical support. Other species shared intelligence about Zaxian fleet movements. Frank wasn't surprised. The Zaxians had conquered 17 civilizations over thousands of years. Many galactic races feared they would be next. 10 days after the executions, the Human Alliance launched its response. The Retribution and 5 other enhanced ships slipped away from the solar system using a new FTL method that left no trace for Zaxian sensors to detect. At the same time, transformed civilian ships took defensive positions around human colonies. From the outside, they looked like ordinary transports, but inside, they carried weapons and soldiers ready to fight. Frank watched from his command center as reports came in. Zaxian warships had appeared near 3 human colonies. They expected to find frightened civilians and weak defenses. Instead, they met ships that fought back with unexpected strength. Zaxian fleet at Tau Colony is retreating, reported Alan Wright. 2 of their ships destroyed, 1 damaged. The same at New Terra, added another officer. They didn't expect resistance so soon. Frank nodded, but his attention was on another screen, the one tracking the Retribution's mission. Captain Johnson and her crew were about to make history, using tactics no species had tried before. If they succeeded, it would change the nature of space warfare forever. The Zaxians executed our people to show their power, Frank said quietly. Now we show them ours. Captain Lisa Johnson stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching her crew prepare for their first combat mission. The ship hummed with energy as the new systems came online. Through the view screen, She could see the stars distorted by their faster than light bubble. 2 minutes to Vega Prime, announced the navigation officer. Lisa touched the small photo she kept on her console, her parents smiling in front of their home on New Horizon Colony. She had not cried when she learned of their deaths. There would be time for tears after the war. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Remember your training. What we do today changes everything. The Retribution dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Vega Prime system. 5 Zaxian warships orbited the planet, which the Empire had taken from another species a century ago. None of the Zaxian sensors detected the human ship yet, their first advantage. Deploy scout drones, Lisa said. Tiny unmanned craft sped away from the Retribution, sending back detailed scans of the Zaxian ships. This was the human way of war. Gather information, find weaknesses, then strike with precision. Zaxian ships are in standard defensive formation, reported Officer Ben Miller at the tactical station. Their shields are at minimal power. They don't expect any threat here. Lisa studied the tactical display. The Zaxians used the same formations they had used for centuries. Their military relied on overwhelming power, not creativity or adaptation. Select primary target, she ordered. Target selected. Their command ship. Lisa took a deep breath. Prepare for micro-jump. Weapons ready. The crew tensed. What they were about to do had never been done in combat before. Using FTL jumps during a battle broke all established rules of space warfare. Ships normally needed time to calculate safe jumps across light years. The Retribution would jump just a few thousand kilometers, appearing right next to the Zaxian command ship. Jump in 3, 2, 1. The stars blurred, then snapped back into focus. The Retribution now hovered less than a kilometer from the Zaxian command ship, a massive vessel covered in weapon ports. Fire main cannons, beams of concentrated energy, shot from the Retribution, striking the Zaxian ship before its crew could raise shields. The Zaxian vessel shuddered as sections of its hull exploded outward. They're powering weapons, Ben shouted. Micro-jump 2, Lisa ordered calmly. The Retribution vanished again, reappearing on the opposite side of the Zaxian formation. 2 more of their ships now faced the human vessel, turning slowly to bring their weapons to bear. Fire all batteries. The Retribution's new weapons tore through the weakened shields of the Zaxian ships. On Lisa's tactical display, she could see the enemy vessels trying to coordinate, to understand what was happening. But each time they began to respond, the Retribution jumped to a new position. Zaxian reinforcements entering the system, warned Ben. Lisa nodded. As expected, deploy Package Alpha. From the Retribution's launch bay, dozens of small devices shot out into space. Each one generated a false sensor signature, making it appear as if multiple human ships had arrived. The Zaxian reinforcements hesitated, unsure which targets were real. Time to part 2 of the mission, Lisa said. Set course for the enemy flagship. While the Retribution had been attacking, a smaller human vessel had entered the system undetected. The stealth ship carried Special Operations Team 7, led by Lieutenant Daniel Kim. Their mission was even more daring than the Retribution's attack. Daniel and his 12 team members wore advanced spacesuits as they approached the Zaxian flagship, Imperial Fist. The massive ship was 3 kilometers long with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But firepower meant nothing if the weapons couldn't fire. Remember, silent approach, Daniel told his team over the secure comm link. Plant the devices at the marked locations, then get out. This is not a fight, it's a heist. Their small craft attached to the hull of the Imperial Fist near a maintenance airlock. Within minutes, the team was inside the Zaxian vessel. They split into 4 groups, each heading to different sections of the ship. Daniel led his group toward the main weapon control center. The Zaxian crew was distracted by the Retribution's attack, rushing to battle stations. Few noticed the small team of humans moving through the service corridors. When they reached the weapon control center, Daniel activated a device that temporarily disabled the room's internal sensors. Then his team struck. They used stun weapons to incapacitate the Zaxian officers, working quickly and silently. Plant the disruptor, Daniel ordered. His tech specialist attached a small device to the main control panel. The quantum disruptor began its work immediately, sending invisible signals through the ship's systems. These signals didn't damage anything. They simply prevented the complex targeting computers from functioning properly. "Disruptor active," reported the specialist. "Their weapons are now useless," Daniel nodded. "Team 2, report. Engine room secured. Disruptor planted." "Team 3, report." Silence. "Team 3, report," Daniel repeated, tension in his voice. Finally, a response came. The voice strained. "Heavy resistance at the shield generator. 3 men down. Need assistance." Daniel made a quick decision. "Team 4, continue to the communications center. My team will help Team 3. Daniel and his 3 teammates rushed through the corridors, toward the shield generator. They found Team 3 pinned down by Zaxian security forces. The tall reptilian aliens fired energy weapons down the corridor. "Cover me," Daniel said, pulling a special grenade from his belt. As his team provided, covering fire, Daniel rolled the grenade toward the Zaxian position. It didn't explode. Instead, it released a dense smoke that blocked the heat-sensitive vision Zaxians relied on. In the confusion, Daniel's team pushed forward, stunning the remaining security forces. They reached the shield generator room, where they found 2 members of Team 3 still alive. "Plant the disruptor and let's go," Daniel ordered. "Team 4, status. Communication center secured. Disruptor planted." Daniel helped his injured teammates as they retreated toward their entry point. "All teams fall back to the extraction point." As they moved through the Zaxian ship, alarms began to sound. The enemy had discovered the intruders. Security forces converged on their position from multiple directions. "We're cut off from the airlock," reported Daniel's navigator. Daniel checked the ship's layout on his wrist display. "Alternative exit through the shuttle bay. Move." The team fought their way to the shuttle bay, stunning any Zaxians they encountered. Daniel didn't want to kill unless absolutely necessary. Their mission was sabotage, not slaughter. When they reached the shuttle bay, they found it full of Zaxian troops. A fierce firefight erupted as the humans took cover behind cargo containers. "We need extraction," Daniel called to the stealth ship waiting outside. "On our way," came the response. "Hold position." The Zaxians pressed forward, their superior numbers beginning to overwhelm the human team. Daniel lost 2 more team members before the wall of the shuttle bay exploded inward. The stealth ship hovered beyond the breach. Its ramp extended. "Go! Go, go!" Daniel shouted, providing covering fire as his remaining team members jumped across the space between the ships. He was the last to jump, a Zaxian energy blast grazing his leg as he leapt. Strong hands pulled him into the stealth ship, which immediately pulled away from the Imperial fist. "Did everyone make it?" Daniel asked, grimacing from his wound. 6 of 12, replied his second-in-command grimly. "The rest didn't make it." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, honoring his fallen teammates. Then he activated his communicator. "Captain Johnson, mission complete. All disruptors planted." On the bridge of the Retribution, Lisa received Daniel's message with satisfaction. "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Get your team to safety." She turned to her tactical officer. "Target the Imperial Fist. Let's see if the disruptors worked." The Retribution performed another micro-jump, appearing directly in front of the massive Zaxian flagship. The Imperial Fist should have fired immediately, destroying the much smaller human vessel. Instead, it hung in space, its weapon ports glowing with energy that could not be released. "Their targeting systems are offline," Ben reported with a grin. "They can't fire a single shot." Lisa nodded. "Send the message." A communication went out to the Imperial Fist, broadcast on all Zaxian frequencies. "This is Captain Lisa Johnson of the Human Alliance ship Retribution. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are compromised. Your communications are restricted. You have 2 options: surrender or be destroyed." For several long minutes, there was no response. Then, a reply came from the Zaxian flagship. "This is Admiral Crux of the Imperial Fleet. By what trickery have you done this?" "No trickery," Lisa replied. "Just human ingenuity. Your decision, Admiral?" Another pause, longer this time. Finally, "We surrender." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. A wise choice. Within hours, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. The mighty Imperial Fist, pride of the Zaxian fleet, captured without firing a shot. Other Zaxian ships destroyed or scattered by a single human vessel using tactics never seen before. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Richard Hayes presented evidence of additional Zaxian atrocities. Images of bombed civilian colonies, not just human ones. Records of other prisoners executed, in violation of galactic law. Proof that the Zaxian Empire had broken treaties with 17 different species. 3 years had passed since the Zaxian Empire executed 300 human prisoners. 3 years of brutal warfare across the galaxy. 3 years in which humanity had transformed from a minor power into the leader of a galactic coalition. Admiral Julia Ross stood on the bridge of the human flagship Vengeance, looking at the blue-green world of Zax Prime through the viewscreen. The Vengeance was the most powerful ship ever built by human hands. It carried weapons that could reduce cities to ash, shields that could withstand the strongest Zaxian attacks, and engines that could outrun any enemy vessel. But Julia hoped she wouldn't need to use that power today. "Status of the fleet?" she asked her first officer. "All ships in position, Admiral. Human forces are in the inner system. Arcturus ships guard the jump points. The liberated Centauri forces are protecting our supply lines." Julia nodded. 3 years ago, humanity fought alone. Now they led an alliance of a dozen species, all united against Zaxian tyranny. It had been a long and costly road to this moment. And Operation Hammerfall? All phases ready to begin on your command. Julia took a deep breath. Operation Hammerfall was General Martinez's master plan to end the war. A coordinated assault on Zax Prime itself, designed to force the Empire's unconditional surrender. Not to destroy their civilization, but to remove the military and political leadership that had brought so much suffering to the galaxy. "Open a channel to Zax Prime," she ordered. "Direct to Emperor Kraxathul." On the view screen, the image of the planet was replaced by the Imperial Palace. Emperor Kraxathul sat on his throne, his scales dulled with age and stress. Around him stood his war council, their postures revealing their exhaustion. "Emperor Kraxathul," Julia said formally. "I am Admiral Julia Ross of the Human Alliance. I speak for the United Forces now orbiting your world." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Have you come to destroy us, human? To take revenge for your losses?" Julia kept her voice steady. "I have come to offer you a choice. Unconditional surrender or complete military defeat. Either way, the Zaxian Empire as you have known it will end today." "You dare to threaten the Empire?" Kraxathul hissed, but his anger lacked conviction. "We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. And in those years you conquered 17 civilizations. You executed prisoners in violation of galactic law. You bombed civilian populations on Earth and other worlds." Julia leaned closer to the screen. "Remember New Horizon. Remember Earth. The choice is yours." She gestured to her communications officer, who displayed a detailed map of Zax Prime. Red dots marked military bases, weapons factories, and government buildings. "The targeting data for Operation Hammerfall. These are our initial targets," Julia explained. "Precision strikes against military and government facilities. No civilian areas. After that, we move to Phase 2, the complete disarmament of your forces." Emperor Kraxathul looked to his war council. Admiral Vex, once proud and confident, now spoke in a defeated tone. "Our forces are depleted, Emperor. The outer colonies have fallen. The Imperial Armada is at 30% strength. We cannot win." The Emperor's scales darkened with anger. "We are Zaxians, we do not surrender." "Then you doom your people to needless suffering," Julia replied calmly. "This is not a negotiation. You have 1 hour to transmit your surrender on all frequencies. If we do not receive it, Operation Hammerfall begins." She closed the channel, leaving the Emperor to his decision. Julia didn't enjoy threatening an entire civilization, even one that had caused so much pain. But 3 years of war had taught her that Zaxian leadership only understood strength. "What do you think they'll do?" asked her first officer. Julia studied the planet below. The Emperor will refuse, his pride won't let him surrender, but his war council might have other ideas. While they waited for the deadline, Julia received reports from across Zaxian space. Human and allied forces were in position around every major Zaxian world. Captain Steve Harris led the fleet guarding the liberated territories, where species, once conquered by the Empire, now tasted freedom for the first time in centuries. Admiral called her communications officer. Message from Zax Prime, but not from the Emperor. Julia raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The screen showed not the Imperial Palace, but a military command center. Admiral Vex stood surrounded by Zaxian military leaders. Admiral Ross, he said formally. The War Council of the Zaxian Empire wishes to discuss the terms of surrender. Julia kept her expression neutral. And Emperor Kraxthul? Vex's scales shifted color, and what Julia had learned was a sign of discomfort. The Emperor has been relieved of command. For the good of our people. A coup, then? The military had finally decided that Kraxthul's pride was not worth the destruction of their civilization. There are no terms to discuss, Julia said firmly. Unconditional surrender only, but I can tell you what will follow. Your military will be disarmed, your government restructured, the species you conquered will be liberated, but your people will not be harmed, and your worlds will not be destroyed. Vex looked at his fellow officers, then back at Julia. You would show such mercy after what we did to your worlds? Julia thought of the billions who had died in this war, the cities reduced to ash, the families torn apart. She thought of her own sister, killed when Zaxian forces bombed Vancouver. This is not mercy, she said quietly. This is justice. Humans do not massacre civilians or execute prisoners. We are not like you. The Zaxian admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. We surrender. Within the hour, the formal surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. The Zaxian Empire, which had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years, had fallen, not to a superior military force or better technology, but to the human way of war. Adaptive, creative, and unwilling to accept defeat. As Julia watched Zaxian military commanders sign the surrender documents aboard the Vengeance, she felt no triumph, only relief that the killing would finally stop. The next week saw the implementation of the human-led peace plan. Captain Steve Harris led the teams that liberated the worlds conquered by the Zaxians. On planet after planet, species that had lived under Zaxian control for centuries now had the chance to govern themselves. On one such world, a small blue planet called Nirth, Steve watched as the local people tore down a statue of Emperor Kraxthul. They were a gentle species with 4 arms and large eyes, who had been forced to work in Zaxian mines for generations. What will happen to us now? Asked their leader, a female named Silai. That's for you to decide, Steve told her. The Human Alliance and our coalition partners will provide protection and aid, but we won't rule you. No one will ever again. Across Zaxian space, similar scenes played out. Imperial flags came down. Weapons were surrendered, and for the first time in millennia, dozens of species looked to the future without fear. On Earth, President Catherine Wells stood before the Galactic Council. 3 years older, with gray now streaking her hair, she addressed the representatives of over 100 galactic civilizations. The war is over, she announced. The Zaxian Empire has surrendered. Now, we must build something better from the ashes of conflict. She outlined the plan for reconstruction that the Human Alliance had developed. Former Zaxian territories would be reorganized as independent worlds or returned to their original inhabitants. Zaxian military forces would be reduced to defensive capabilities only, and a new galactic peacekeeping force would be established with representatives from all species. Most importantly, Wells continued, we must ensure that such atrocities never happen again. I propose the creation of the Morgan Accords, named for Lieutenant Susan Morgan, and the prisoners executed at New Horizon. These accords will establish new laws governing the treatment of prisoners and the conduct of war. The council chamber was silent as Wells finished her speech. Humanity did not seek this war, but we have finished it. Let this be a lesson to any power that believes military might grants the right to commit atrocities. Humanity will not stand idle in the face of injustice, not for ourselves, and not for any sentient beings who wish to live in peace. The vote to accept the Morgan Accords was unanimous. Even the new Zaxian representative, a moderate selected, to replace the imperial delegation, voted in favor. As the reconstruction began, General Frank Martinez stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt city of Chicago. Next to him was Admiral Nicole Baker, architect of the strategy that had won the war. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Nicole asked. "Leading a galactic coalition, reshaping the power structure that's existed for thousands of years?" Frank shook his head. "When I saw that execution video, all I wanted was justice for our people. I never thought beyond winning the war." "And now?" Frank looked out at the city, where humans worked alongside alien allies. In the harbor, an Arcturus ship unloaded advanced medical equipment to help heal those injured in the Zaxian bombardment. Overhead, ships from a dozen worlds moved through Earth's skies, no longer enemies but partners. "Now we build something that lasts," he said quietly. "Something worth all the sacrifice." At the center of the rebuilt Chicago stood a memorial to those lost in the war, names of civilians and soldiers carved in stone. And at the center, a special monument to the 300 prisoners executed at New Horizon, the spark that had ignited the conflict.